Hello and welcome back to Future You, the podcast brought to you by graduate careers experts Prospects. I'm your host, Emily Slade, and in this episode I chat to Matt, who works in SEO.
My name's Matt, and I am an SEO freelance consultant, relatively new in the freelance world as well. Yeah, enjoying it so far.
Perfect. So what is an SEO consultant?
Well, first of all, SEO stands for search engine optimization. So really my job is to try and get websites ranking as high as possible on search engines, mainly Google, because that's the most popular search engine. But sort of a higher level than that is just trying to make a website and a brand more visible online is as high level as I can go, really. In terms of SEO, you can split it into 3 to maybe 5 main core pillars. First of which is content and on-page SEO is what we call it. So that will be physically like written content on the web page, but also imagery, video, all that. Podcasts would also be some content. So it would be my job to try and optimize that as much as possible for not just search engines, but for people. And that's really important. We don't just optimize for search engines. So it's quite funny. It's actually search engine optimization, but I'd like to try and think as people optimization, which sounds weird when you say it out loud. So you've got the content side of things, you've got the technical SEO side of things. So that's essentially trying to make the user experience of a website as best as we can. Again, thinking of people first, how frustrating it is when you go on a website and it's slow and you try and click on something and suddenly the thing moves and it's so annoying. So we've got that. And the other side of technical is trying to make a website more crawlable and I suppose visible to search engines. Third pillar is what we call off-page SEO. So that's, you may have heard of a term called backlinking or link building. So that is essentially trying to build an authority off your website. So I guess one way I would describe it is if I had a link going to my website from the BBC, who is a reputable, authoritative source, very basic level, Google would see, or search engines would see, okay, Matt's got a link from this reputable source, so Matt must be reputable as well. And because of that, we'll try and push you up the rankings a little bit further. Again, very sort of top level way of describing that. But so you've got that. And then you've got the local and international levels side of things as well. So again, if you had a shop in a city somewhere, your SEO strategy would be very different to a B2B only online type business. So yeah, it's very varied, which makes it really interesting.
And is it something that you sort of, you do those 3 pillars, search engine optimization, boom, done, or do you have to come back on like a daily, weekly basis and keep updating all of that stuff?
This is going to be funny because it depends is a very well-known phrase within the SEO industry. But yeah, it does depend. What my approach would be is I always start with the research. So figure out what people are actually searching for. What is their intent behind those searches? Research around the topic, research around the industry. Again, that's another reason why I love it, because it's not just, your head's not just on a website. It's a bigger picture thing. So you start with that. And then that would then kind of determine where you would go. So you'd be like, okay, this website, the content's awful compared to what people are actually looking for. So that's where my focus is going to be for the next month, 3 months, 6 months. Again, without going into the weeds, if you had a big website that might be an e-commerce website, technical SEO might be more important than one of the other pillars, for example. So yeah, it really depends on the business, on the audience as well. I would say I'd always come back to that thing of think of the person that's actually trying to get on your website. Like I always try and go back to basics. Google's, or Bing, I always say Google, but what I mean, search engine's job really is to provide the best experience possible for someone that's searching something. I don't know, it sounds really basic when you say it out loud, but if you can provide a seamless experience for someone that's searching running shoes for sale or best running shoes, and your website comes up with a really amazing piece of content that talks through about what you should consider when you're buying your running shoes. Really unique content around that. And the website's also really fast and it's really easily crawlable from a search engine perspective. And it's also backed up by links that from authoritative websites. Then you're not going to be far away. I mean, probably shooting myself in the foot there, but yeah, that's at a very basic level is where I would, going back to your question, it sort of depends on what the client needs.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So what was your educational journey?
Yeah, how long have we got? So I guess, I went to high school. I got relatively average grades. I think I got, is sort of showing my age now, I got 5 C's and 5 B's in GCSE. So nothing spectacular. I then had no idea what I wanted to do. So I did a bit of work experience. I went to college and did some IT thing that I can't even remember what it was. And then, I went around the houses. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I then worked in a warehouse at Lotus Cars, which is fun.
Ooh.
That genuinely was one of the best places I ever worked. It was just so fun. And I was just pretty confused, didn't know what to do. I did have like this, I love science and I love, I've got a curious mind, I guess. So whilst I was at Lotus, I decided I wanted to do something sciencey. And I also liked geology like specifically. So when I was at Lotus, I decided to go back to college and I was 21 at this point. So went back to college and did like a access course, I think they call it, to natural sciences. The idea with that is that it will then enable me to then go to university and study geology. I had this lovely idea that I'd become some sort of volcanologist and stand on top of volcanoes and stuff like this. And because I had a genuine interest in geology and rocks and all that, it seemed like a way to go. So went to college, did really well there, went to University of Leicester for geology. As I said, I was 22, I think, at this point when I went to uni. So I was a little older than most people that go to uni. Yeah, and I guess to cut a long story short, I quickly found that geology was more of a hobby / interest rather than a career that I wanted to pursue, which then threw a cat of mud in the pigeons a little bit because I was then feeling like I was back at square one again. And I was like, I'm now 22 and I still don't know what to do. But I'll always remember this moment. I was at my desk in my halls and I still don't know why we were asked to do this, but I was studying interplanetary geology and one of the modules was to design a website about the Apollo missions to the moon. It's just so random. And I found myself spending hours and hours and hours on this website. And I, funnily enough, not anything to do with the content on the website. I was just happy building this thing and really enjoying it. And as I say, I really remember this moment. It was one of these like light bulbs, like, why don't I just do this? So and at that moment, that was when I was like, okay, this isn't for me at uni. I love the social side of things, probably a bit too much. But I decided to leave in the summer and I worked in pubs, warehouses and whilst I was at home, I'd be teaching myself how to design websites and build websites. And then I got a job at a very small agency, again, just doing that, building websites, which felt like the big milestone. It was like, okay, I've now made that step into a career around websites and the internet. And then, did okay there. And then, a very long story short, I then went self-employed, worked for myself for, I think it was around 2 years or so, building websites for my own clients, which again, loved, but I craved people, working at home, like co-working spaces. I think back then, this was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I think it was. They weren't a thing. I don't remember them being a thing. So working at home, It was just driving me crazy. You get to the end of the day and you'd be like, I haven't actually said a word
Yeah,
to anyone today.
Opened my mouth.
Yeah. And then I think, again, by luck, I'm going to say, I got a call from a recruiter randomly about an SEO job. And obviously I knew about SEO because it's sort of part and parcel of building a website. I did have a specific interest in that whilst I was building websites as well. It wasn't just about creating a nice looking website. I wanted it to rank well and stuff, and I was really interested to see how that developed. Anyway, I got this call. It was through an agency in Norwich it was a really exciting place to be. They just won literally a global award at Google for their work. And so when I got this call, I was like, is this real? I don't really feel like this is real. Anyway, that went well. I got the job there. I was the first SEO there. So they were a paid media agency, really. And and then I was there for 8 years and then built a team, and it was good fun. Became head of SEO. I got that sort of itch, I suppose, that a lot of people do in agency and probably in-house worlds, where I fancied sort of going alone again. But this time, I've gone for a co-working space, and it's the best decision I've ever made. So yeah, that's my journey. It's very convoluted and here, there and everywhere.
No, it's very real, I think, because I can't imagine you were going to turn around and say, I studied, especially, 10, 15 years ago, I did a degree in SEO. I don't think that kind of thing existed back then.
And it was quite difficult because, and I really feel for people that were in my position. Like, you sort of expected, I don't know, education, they obviously don't mean this to be the case, but you're expected to feel like you should know what to do, even though like 14.
At like 12.
Yeah. And like my brother, for example, since he was like 3 years old, he was like, oh, I want to be some sort of artist, designer or something. And then his path was very linear. School, college, did graphic design college, went to university, graphic design. Now he's a graphic designer.
Yeah, easy peasy.
So from my perspective, seeing him as well, that's so done it so easily. Well, not easily, that's unfair, but you know what I mean.
Linearly.
Yeah.
That's the word.
Like, why can't I be like that?
Yeah, I've always found it's better to do things to know what you don't want to do, and then that's always going to get you closer to figuring out what you do want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with SEO as well, I think you have to have sort of a certain type of mind. Like, you have to be curious. It's the sort of job that you can't just do because you've kind of ended up in it. You have to want to do it because it's certainly the technical side of things. It can be, a little bit dry here and there, but you have to have that sort of drive. Like, okay, the bigger picture is this, and that's why I'm doing it. So yeah, very here, there and everywhere, my journey.
Yeah.
But I'm glad, I have no regrets whatsoever about that journey either. And I think that's really important to say, because there were moments, as I say, when I was like 22, I was like, how am I here again? Still don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
After getting in loads of debt, going to university, with the tuition fees and stuff. But yeah, still no regrets.
Yeah. So now you're freelance SEO. So what does a typical working day look like for you?
Without sounding cliche, it's almost the best thing about it. There isn't really like a typical working day. As I mentioned earlier, with like the 4 or 5 main pillars of SEO, it means that one day you can be quite content heavy and being quite creative with content and taking your clients on a journey of like where they should perhaps be thinking about their content. But then on the flip side, or even you do that in the morning, and then in the afternoon you can be doing the dry technical stuff, as I just mentioned. So yeah, there isn't a typical day, and I think that's why I really enjoy it. It's a real blend of creativity and technicality. We'll say that's a word. Sure.
It's a word now.
Which I don't know. I don't feel like there are many jobs out there that has that sort of blend of sort of left brain, right brain, So yeah, it keeps me on my toes for sure.
Yeah. So do you have to find your own clients, or do they come to you?
I've been really lucky. I'll sort of hold my hands up. I've been really lucky that I've got a really nice, good network around me. So yeah, of course, when I went freelance, there was a real, I guess, trepidation that this might not work. And there was always an element of risk to it. Obviously, money, unfortunately, does make the world go round. So I've got a young son, family and stuff, so I can't just not, I had to earn, right? But yeah, luckily, since I've gone freelance, I haven't actually had to look for work that much. I sort of sent a couple of people some emails and did a LinkedIn thing. So yeah, LinkedIn is a slightly gross place sometimes, but also very helpful. So yeah, I put a few posts on there, and it's sort of a domino effect. Like, I'm surprised at how many people actually that I do know in my network, and then how many people those people know, if that makes sense. And that, so far I've sort of relied on that, and what am I now, 7-8 months in? Yeah, and things are going well. But I appreciate it's not always like that, and it won't always be like that for me either. And again, keeping myself on my toes a little bit.
So the latest thing to have reached the search engines is AI overview. Have you noticed, is that impacting your work, your job, your role, negatively, positively? What's going on there?
Woo, big question. I guess specifically about AI overviews. So the SERP, what we call the search engine result page feature, that's what we call it. Those specifically haven't impacted me and my clients yet. That it has, but not on like a measurable sense.
Right.
I think AI AI as a topical sense, yeah, that's hugely impacted. Not necessarily my clients in terms of results and revenue and all those lovely things, but almost the way of working is probably the biggest thing that's changed, and it is changing so quickly as well. Like 2-3 years ago, it wasn't really a thing. Now it's, I don't know, I'd love to know how many people use AI as part of their day to day. And probably most people don't even know they're using it. Like, so when it all sort of exploded with ChatGPT and being getting involved in things like this, there was a lot of, God, this new thing is, where's this come from? But actually, AI has been a part of our lives for so long. Certainly in the digital marketing world, I still remember my paid media colleagues at the agency I worked with. They were like, "Oh, it's not new. Like, Google have been using these models for ages in our paid stuff." Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's a big. I would be naive if I wasn't thinking how, like, what's it going to be like next month? What's it going to be like in 6 months, 2 years? Because it's becoming so clever. I use it every day, mainly for efficiency point of views. Like, I have my head in spreadsheets quite a lot, and I'm not an Excel wizard whatsoever. But things like ChatGPT, and that's really helped me create like crazy formulas that are 200 characters long that I don't understand, but it's making my workload so much easier and workflow so much easier. So, I mean, what next is a massive. I mean, we could have a whole podcast series on that. Yeah, I don't know. I would be naive to sort of say or make any sort of prediction. Specifically around SEO, I think the next big step would be, I'm going to say Google, because we'll just forget about the other search engines.
Sorry, other search engines.
I am absolutely certain that they will come up with some sort of e-commerce integration within the search engine results page. So again, let's use running shoes as an example. Initially, when AI overviews got announced, there was sort of hints of what this thing could be like in the future, and we're nowhere near that capability yet, but it's obviously in their plan. But one of those features was, let's go back to running shoes. If you search what are the best running shoes for a marathon in Italy, in theory, in the future, it will come up with a really detailed answer, sort of talking about, okay, it's Italy, it's probably going to be warm, so you need to think about breathability of your shoes. Marathon, obviously, you could think about the marathon distance, blah, blah, blah. And then it will come up with sort of varied different types of shoes. Sorry, it's a very convoluted answer, but I genuinely believe that you'll soon be able to click on that result and then buy the trainers like on Google, essentially, without having to click through to the website, which would be massive, because you're then suddenly taking that whole journey away from people's websites, people that spend huge amount of time, money on optimizing, building. because one big thing here is that perhaps doesn't get talked about enough is Google exists because it makes a lot of money. And that's one big thing that a lot of people have been talking about is AI overviews potentially could have quite a big impact on their ads. And, and they make a lot of money from ads. So a way of perhaps helping that revenue stream for Google is perhaps integrating some sort of e-commerce functionality within the search and then taking some sort of percentage transaction fee or something like this. So, I don't know. That's a prediction I have. Whether it will happen, I don't know. Who knows? But to me, if I was at Google, I'd be like, why? Let's do this. Let's try and keep everything on our platform.
Yeah, of course.
And see. So, it's an ever-changing world. Again, another reason why I love my job, because it's every single day is something's changed.
Yeah. Do you have to keep topping up your own knowledge? Do you keep taking classes, workshops, courses, or just reading up on the latest information to make sure you're cutting edge?
Yeah. And you have to, because you get left behind very quickly. Don't necessarily do things like courses, but again, LinkedIn is a very good resource. There's so many people on there that I follow and would recommend to follow. Again, it's a really good community as well. Yeah, that would probably be one of my biggest tips actually, is if you were to get into SEO, is you should always have that desire to learn. I've been doing it for over 10 years and I'm learning every day still, which is great. But again, if you have even a month of not doing that, you're going to get left behind. So somewhere like LinkedIn is a really good place for that sort of knowledge.
What other skill sets would you say someone interested in SEO should ideally possess?
I guess it here it goes. It depends.
It depends.
So some people specialize in technical SEO, some people specialize in like the content side of things. So, but then others, probably like myself, more of a generalist. So I would ask yourself that, like, where would you perhaps want to go in? And you might not necessarily have the answer. It's sort of the thing that you probably discover as you're learning it. One skill I think that is really overlooked is sort of the commercial element. So see, people hire SEOs to try and make more money, right? Most of the time. And SEOs cost money, because certainly the content side of things can be quite creative. Sort of the commercial side of things gets a little bit lost. It's sort of like, oh, well, put your rankings up a little bit, or we're now ranking first for this. Cool, but what does that actually mean? Like in terms of the bottom line? And granted, it's very difficult to measure that, certainly from an SEO perspective, and a paid community will probably be up in arms from what I'm about to say now, but it's easier from a paid perspective because you have that whole Google Ads platform that can track, how much you're spending and how much basically you're selling, and you can kind of make that A to B connection. Whereas SEO, it's not, weirdly, you're sort of hacking the system a little bit. There isn't a platform that Google owns or anything, so you can't really track that. Sort of, this person's landed on your website and then they've gone and bought something. So it's quite hard to, I guess, put like a specific ROI on SEO, but to have that commercial understanding of, okay, the reason they're doing this is to make money, I think is really important. Some people that I know have almost like a financial background, which I think goes hand in hand. But then you've got the other side, the creative side of things. So if you're creative, SEO could be a really great place for you to be as well. So yeah, lots of skills that you can sort of, if you have. Again, it's a bit of an open arm industry. It's like a lot of people with all sorts of different skills can get into it and thrive. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Are there any SEO myths that you'd like to debunk?
Yeah, again, how long have you got? Let's keep it recent, I suppose. So the new thing at the moment is, how do we optimize for AI? And again, I might be sort of putting my head on the block for a little bit here, but I don't necessarily think your approach has to be any different to what it would be for traditional SEO, as we call it. Yes, the LLMs work differently to search engines. But in theory, if you get all the basics right, again, about those 4 or 5 pillars that I mentioned, you're providing people with the best experience, then AI should like you as well, essentially, is where I'd put it. So that's one. I don't necessarily think it's a myth, but it's something that I'm aware of, as a lot of people are talking about. Right, we need to optimize for AI. And I'm like, just be careful. Like, and plus, when we say optimize for AI, is when you search something in ChatGPT for something and it references websites. That's what they're talking about. Like, how can we get clicks and people from ChatGPT onto my website? So I just think be careful, because there's not many people that are actually clicking on like AI results in ChatGPT and stuff. So that's one myth. I guess another myth is I've already said it in a way, is optimizing for search engines. Shouldn't be doing that. Yes, there are specific things you can do to help search engines sort of discover your website and discover your content, but you should absolutely be doing it for people rather than search engines.
What's the best piece of advice that you'd give to someone starting out?
I would say almost what I said earlier about you just need to keep on top of it. Always learn and learn and learn and learn again. And not just within the SEO world. I think it's really important that you learn about the basics of how paid media works and how SEO and paid work together, how Excel works, all these things, because you have to have all this sort of knowledge to be a good SEO. And quite often I see a lot of people are very sort of drilled down on SEO and want to focus on that, but it's very beneficial to have an eye on everything. I could be biased by saying this, but I think SEO, when it comes to digital marketing, is almost like the core to digital marketing, because again, with good SEO, in theory, you will have a better website. So if you're spending £1 million on Google Ads, and actually the SEO work has improved the website's user experience, those people that are coming from the ads are more likely to convert and turn into a sale. So it's having a beneficial impact on another massive sort of marketing stream. So again, just having a breadth of knowledge, not necessarily like the ins and outs of how ads work or the ins and outs of how websites build, but just like an underlying knowledge of a bit of everything probably will be beneficial.
Yeah, perfect. If people want to reach out to you for advice or help, can they? They
can. I'm on LinkedIn. My surname's weird, Meazey, Meazey, and I have a website, mattmeazey.co.uk. Yeah, I know I'd be genuinely really happy to chat, because, as I said, there might be some people listening who were in my position a long time ago of like, I don't know what on earth I should be doing. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to receive some messages and that. And if I can help someone a tiny, tiny bit, I'd be well happy with that. Feel free to chat.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Matt for their time. For more information on working in SEO or IT, head to prospects.ac.uk. All links are in the show notes below. For a full-length video version of this episode, check out our YouTube channel at FutureUPod. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Thank you, as always, for listening, and good luck on your journey to Future You.